African Ascent is always privileged to bring you the best, the brightest, and the potentially germinating artists from Berklee College of Music. My viewers, I always say thousands of you, there will come a time in which I might be able to say 1 million of you are going to be treated to another musical festivity with very young students whom I continue to have the pleasure of teaching and learning at Berklee College of Music, that many consider to be the leading college for the study of contemporary music. It's my honor then to interact with this young blood who work hard, who are polished, as you see, and determined to succeed, but always done with great respect of their educators and great respect of their talents, and with an arresting humility that have come to fall in love with at Berklee College of Music. African Ascent then brings you John Short. I joke with him occasionally, as I was a few minutes ago. I'm always tempted to call him John Tall. We had a laugh about that. Jemina from France. Maya Silva, a blend of Ireland, Cape Verde, and of course the US, who otherwise considers herself an American. In many respects, this is a musical performance with a global dimension, and I'm so honored to have the three of you here. So let me begin by simply asking you to introduce yourselves to my audience. Let me begin with John Short. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Don't be shy. I know you could be shy, but you need not be. Tell the audience how you got to be a musician, what genre of music you're practicing now. You might also want to brag about the fact that you're already a published author. I have published one of your articles in Berklee's prestigious leading magazine, Fusion magazine, before you graduated.
It's very true, and I'm very thankful for that. I grew up in Texas. I had a kind of odd musical background. I started playing piano when I was 4, and I started playing violin when I was about 7 or 8. And in a lot of respects, I ditched both of those when I turned 14 because I became very guitar crazy. And for a long time, I really wanted to be a classical musician. To some degree, you know, as far as composition goes, which is a major interest of mine. That's where I seem to be gravitating to more nowadays. I don't know. I feel like in some ways there was a sort of a direction I could have gone in classical music composition, and I sort of just decided not to. Really, because it just didn't seem possible, and I actually had a lot more fun playing bass and playing. Back in Texas, I play a lot of blues and rock and roll, and really with groups, whoever I could play with. But at the moment, I'm now more focused with jazz and rock. I'm really interested in experimentation with music. Even back in Texas, I had a group that was kind of a hybrid group between, I'd say, R&B, and we'd have hip hop as well. I mean, we weren't really very strict in any sense. We just wanted to make whatever it was tasteful, and people appreciate. As far as the writing goes, I've been with you for several years, and I've just been really enriched from your teaching and what in fact, the paper that you had me write was really it was really life-changing. What I went into research for. I mean, the subject relating to the monogenetic origin of the species. It's really unfortunate. A lot of people still aren't very aware of it at all, which is really unfortunate. Given that, I mean. You can tell that there's some particular people that are running the show these days that really are unaware of monogenetic theory of origin. And I think if more people were made aware of that fact, there'd be a lot of indecency, and especially a lot of political violence would be certainly reduced. I guess we can really just hope that that kind of information just becomes more accessible.
Tell us a little bit about the monogenetic hypothesis.
So, of course, the monogenetic theory of origin essentially is that mankind came out of Africa about 3 million years ago. The modern related ancestor to us, to all of us, started there in Ethiopia. And through periods of several thousand years, several million years, migrated out of Africa into Western Europe, into Southeast Asia, eventually to the Americas. And this was seriously contrasting the existing dogma that I'm actually not so sure was accepted by most of the world, but at least by the European colonial powers, which is that man came from separate races from certain quadrants of the map, and that they had no common ancestor or origin, and for that reason it justified the sort of barbarous behavior from, roughly speaking, the Crusades up until today.
That's wonderful. That was a mouthful. Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah.
And now, of course, I'm going to go to France. I have the great honor of having Jemina in my class for the first time. What a student you are. So how did you get to choose music as a lifetime commitment? From everything that I sense, no matter what happens, you're committed to it. You're hungry for music. That's what I sense when you play the piano. It's not just a hobby for you.
No, definitely not. I remember, I think, after discovering the piano, really young, I knew I wanted to do music. Before the age of 10, I was sure it was going to be my life. So I went to this small school when there were a jazz option in the south of France, Marciac. And I was just listening a lot to jazz at this time, and I'm still doing a lot of jazz. That's a music that resonated with me since a very young age. Right now that I'm in Berklee, I also discover film scoring. I discover whole new genre like hip hop or R&B that I also really like. And so I'm expanding a little bit what I play, but I still have this deep attachment to jazz music. In terms of composition, I always loved movies. That's a part of my life as well. And the idea of combining music and movies together by scoring for film, little by little, it becomes also really important in my musician journey.
And Maya. Maya is also new to me. I'm just having her in my class at the moment. I don't know much about Maya, but then I had this cavalier desire once to ask her to perform in one of our classes, and she sang for us, and that's when I was impressed, and I decided to invite you to be part of this coterie of musicians. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm from Massachusetts, from Brockton, Massachusetts, and I grew up with musical parents. My father plays saxophone and my mother played trumpet in high school. Wow. So I picked up the trumpet in 4th grade, I think. So that's where I started. I've always loved singing, but I started playing trumpet, and I was in marching band and jazz band. But somewhere around my sophomore year, I decided I wanted to dedicate more of my time to singing because it's what I love to do more. So I got involved in musical theater and drama club. My high school had an amazing theater program. And just singing actively really made me think about how this is really what I want to do. And especially because I was surrounded by it with my father, because he lives in California. He's a touring musician. So when I would go visit him in the summers, I would go to rehearsals with him and studio sessions, and so I was always around music, and it just really gave me a feeling of this is what I want to do. So that's how I got into music.
Wonderful. And I was thinking after I asked the three of you to perform for African Ascent, I said to myself, the three individuals hardly know one another, nor is it the case that they necessarily play the same kind of music. And here I am, asking them perhaps to do the impossible. What was it like to perform with individuals that you don't know, who play different instruments, who come from different places? It must have been quite a challenge, right?
I thought it was amazing. I learned a lot from both of you, and I enjoyed practicing with you and discovering new things to do while we were going to play. It was great. You guys are very talented. It was, it was a great time.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Really?
Actually, yeah, it's
How
it's
many
great
hours
playing.
did you practice? At Berklee, it's typical to practice at least 4 hours a day. How many times did you meet?
We met like
Twice a week.
twice a week.
Twice a week.
2 hours of time that
Yeah.
we met. So about 4 hours a week, and then plus maybe 2 more rehearsals leading up to.
Is that adequate, or were you pressured?
No, I didn't feel any pressure. I was going to say, I think that's the beauty in this place in Berklee, that I can play with people that come from anywhere, that plays a different genre than I do, and just learn from them.
So you can just join any group at Berklee and
Yeah.
do something with them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. I had one bad experience, though, with some of my students who complained bitterly, A, that I asked them to jam during midterm, and B, that one of them was a classicist, and the other two were jazz players, and 3 of them were women also. They thought that I had asked them to do the impossible. From then on, this is after 12 years of producing African Ascent, and I must have conducted at least 50 or 60 episodes exclusively with students. Then suddenly this experience about 2 years ago, which shattered me. I was so sad that I angered students when I thought that I was giving them an opportunity to build a career. That's why I'm asking the question that I'm asking you now, just to sort of to fish and see if there is any justification for that kind of resistance. So you're telling me that there isn't, that it can practically be asked at any time, given the passion, to produce music with anybody.
If you're truly passionate about it and this is what you want to do, I think it's important to be able to adapt and to understand other genres and other cultures, other people. So in any time, in any place, you'll be put in situations where you don't understand the other person completely, but you should be able to learn and work with that person if this is the career path you want to take.
That's wonderful. Is that how you feel, John? Or?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I think if you're gonna be a professional, you're gonna be thrown into situations where, you know, you might not be able to get along with other players or be able to relate very well, but you got to learn how to deal with to do that, because in real life you don't always get to choose your band. You know, I mean, when you get that primary gig, the people in there might not be your favorite players, and they might not be able to fit very well with you. But you got to figure out how to do it. That's everybody's job as a musician, really.
That how you feel, Jemina, or do you feel differently?
No, I think you're totally right. And I think also as students, we're in a bubble where we can freely exchange and you were saying the word jam, and so it's also another context. And I take all those experiences as something like there's something rich about it. Yeah.
And now, remember when one of our last classes, let me bring the classroom to the episode. We were discussing about the nature of jazz, right?
Yeah.
White jazz, black jazz.
Yeah.
Did we also say yellow jazz? We didn't, not
I
yet.
don't think we did, no.
So far it's essentially black jazz and white jazz.
Yeah.
Do you believe in these distinctions, John? Are they real?
I mean, I definitely would use them about, like if I listened to a record and it sounded really like, the thing about what's called like white jazz to me is when they're trying to take, and the thing is jazz has a particular rhythm to it that, you know, if you spend enough time trying to learn it, a lot of people can play it, you know, sort of irrespective of ethnicity, but there's this tendency in popular music, and it was really prominent in the 50s and the 60s to say, well, this band of guys are really good, but they're black, you know, and we can't have them on our TV show, so we'll get a bunch of guys that are white that are really not near as good, just to keep the system of affairs going. And it's, I mean, the truth is titles like that really help fuel the, I mean, in fact, most other recordings and sort of brands of music are sort of racialized. So for instance, like blues and country music were two commercial avenues in sort of what's called Middle America. And the only real difference between the two of them at the inception were, you know, one group was predominantly black and one was white. A lot of the times they were playing the same songs, you know, just slightly different. And so they invented these genres. And in jazz, it's kind of the same principle.
Have you had an opportunity to play, quote unquote, with black jazz players?
Yeah.
What was the experience like? Was it any different? Were you apprehensive? Were you worried?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, more so of like me, like not playing well. In fact, if you want to make the
not playing well because you are white, or not playing
sometimes
well?
sometimes I've worried that, but
Why?
it's a kind of silly thing to worry about because it's you know, once you make that kind of thought known, it makes you look kind of ridiculous. But in fact, interestingly enough, I played a concert with a girl. We did play yellow jazz because two of the musicians were from South Korea. We were playing jazz standards, and it was really nice. It was really nice. Yeah.
We have about 10 minutes left, I think. So we have to use this time very economically. 5 minutes left. Jemina, the same question.
I think when we're talking about black jazz or white jazz, we can forget that it was associated at the time of segregation with a whole fight for people to have their rights. And I'm thinking about Nina Simone, thinking about Mingus.